Hi everyone, today we are going to talk about HTTP, which stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So what is HTTP? HTTP is protocol which is used for communication between clients and servers. It is stateless protocol, which means that each request-response interaction is maintained independently, so server does not retain information about the past request from the same client. It is application layer protocol. HTTP is allowing clients to request resources such as images, videos, HTML, and whatever you can imagine. So how it works? Let's say that our client is web browser, and our web browser is going to send HTTP request in this format. So we have the method name, which is called get in this example. So there are multiple different kind of HTTP methods, but we are going to talk about that later. So we need to specify the URL and we need to specify the version of the HTTP. So in this case, we have 1.1. So as I mentioned, the web browser is going to initiate the request, usually by some kind of user action, such as submitting the form or entering some kind of URL in the search. So client is going to establish the communication with server. The HTTP request is going to be sent in this format. Server is going to take actions based on the request that server received. So after the taking action based on the request, server is going to send response back to the client in format like this. So we have again the version of the HTTP, we have the status code, and we're going to talk about status code later on. I forgot to mention that as a part of the request, we usually have some kind of headers, and we have optional body. So we're going to talk about that later on, but basically headers are additional information about the requests and responses, and body is something that we are using to provide some kind of data. But to close this up, client is going to send some kind of request to the server is going to take some kind of actions, and server is going to send response back to the client, and that's pretty much it, how it works. It could be explained a little bit more in details, but I assume this is more than enough to know how it works. Let's talk about the different kind of HTTP methods. We have a get method, which is used for retrieving the data from the server. So for example, if we're going to get some kind of data from the server and we are not going to change something in server, we are going to use get. So for example, if we're going to get some kind of image, we are going to use get. Speaking of post, whenever we are expecting to change data at the server side, we are going to use posts. So for example, if we have a website and someone is going to register and fulfill some kind of form and submit that form as well, we are going to receive some kind of data, and that data is going to be sent as part of the post request in the body section. So as I mentioned, post method is mostly used when we are going to create some kind of entities at server side. Put method is used when we are about to update existing entities in our server side. For example, we already have some kind of customers in our database and we are going to change that. Most likely we're going to send a put request, which is going to modify the existing data or create new one if there is no already existing entity like that. Delete is pretty much self-explanatory. Whenever we are about to remove some data, we are going to use delete method. Patch is very similar to the put method. We're using patch when we are sending partial updates. So for example, if our user in database has a name and surname and we are about to update only surname, most likely we are going to use the patch method. So head is very similar to get, but instead of actually getting the resources, we're using head to check availability and to get some kind of metadata. In the end, there is options which are helping us to identify methods that are supported by our server. Let's talk about status codes. 100 means that we got informational status code. 200 means that something completed successfully. So most commonly used ones are 200 OK, 201 created, and 204 no content. So that is something that you are going to see very often. 400 means that there was some kind of client error, such as unauthorized, forbidden, and not found, for example. And there are 500 errors, which means that something went wrong on the server side, for example, internal server error or service unavailable, and so on. Others are providing additional information to request and response. So they are specified in key value pairs. As you can see, connection is a key and keep alive is a value. Headers are often used for providing authorization details such as token and so on. We can use user agent to specify who sent the request, for example, what kind of the methods are allowed, and much more. So we're using body to provide some kind of information. So we're going to send this data, in this example, some kind of user information as a JSON format as part of post request, most likely, or put, or whatever we like. And in the end, the server is going to use that data to perform specified actions. Let's talk about the HTTP versions. In 1996, HTTP 1 was released. It was using the TCP, and for each request, new connection was established. As you can imagine, this is not the best way of handling requests and responses because it is time consuming. So that's why one of the reasons why we have HTTP 1.1, which was released in 1997. So it introduced keep alive connections, which means that multiple requests are going to be handled as a part of the same connection. Also introduced the concept of pipelining, which means that client can send multiple requests and the server is going to respond in the order of the requests. As you can imagine, it was hard to maintain something like that. So that's why we have one of the reasons why we have HTTP 2 in 2015, which introduced streams which were totally independent. So in the end, we have HTTP 3, which introduced new protocol called Quick, which is optimized for heavy mobile usage, and also it introduced a concept of connection ID, which is used when we are switching between different kind of networks and so on. So in the end, let's talk about the HTTPS, which is secure version of HTTP. Data is encrypted. It uses transport layer security, TLS, whatever you like to call it. So basically HTTPS is protecting our data by encrypting it. So whenever you go to the site and you're providing some kind of sensitive information, be careful that that website is using the HTTPS instead of the HTTP, because if website is using HTTP, that means that your data is not protected and it could be easily stolen. So take that into consideration. So I guess that will be pretty much it. I hope that you enjoyed and see you in the next video.